Alright, I watched Sono Toki Kanojo, which is some weird short, like 3 minute an episode show. Not good. It's barely animated. It's like just fading between very short cuts. First off, I don't like the fact that they fade instead of directly cut, because even though they're so long behind between the images, the fade just looks really awkward. Whereas like with when you do like a hard cut with very limited visuals, it gives more room for your brain to fill in the movement in between. Whereas when you do a fade, because it's constantly moving, it removes your ability to fill it in mentally and makes it just all the worse. So I didn't like that. Overall, it just didn't establish anything particularly interesting. It's just like these girls being like it's like these the setup is it's just like the blossoming romance, but they don't really make any of the characters interesting. It's so too short to really do anything. I think. I mean, you could do something, but this show doesn't seem like it's gonna have anything remarkable to convey. I mean, I could honestly see myself like if I was really bored burning through this in an afternoon because it shows short, but because it's not finished and like there's a billion stuff shows like this that you can easily watch. Definitely not worth waiting. Not worth the wait. So would not recommend. All right, Conception. Okay, this one's kind of tough to break down because there's just so much wrong with it. Just everything. So first off, it looks visually like every single generic light novel adaptation you've seen in your life, especially the main character's face. It's like I hate his face. I despise his face. It just gives me so many bad flashbacks to other shows that are also terrible. So there's that. Then what's strange is just this show feels like it was like cobbled together with no care at all. Scenes progress, but it doesn't feel like it goes from scene to scene. It feels like, okay, here's thing happening here. Suddenly we're somewhere else. One scene, so the premise starts off is that the girl is on the roof. She asks the guy to come on the roof. They're alone on the roof, and she's like, I'm pregnant. Oh, conception. Oh, interesting. A pregnant character? And she's like, because all the times we slept together. And then she's like, just kidding. Uh, and she's trying to tell him basically, I got pregnant, but I never slept with anyone. I don't know why, but I have all the symptoms, and the pregnancy test came out true. But before he can react, they get transported to another world. Yeah, it just randomly just teleported to another world. Nope, that's it. When they're there, first off, they barely react at all. Have like no. They're just like whatever. Okay, guess we're in this weird world. Then a monster comes out of the girl's body. I think, if I'm remembering right, and chases them. But the dude uses his sword and kills it. He gets a sword. I forget how he gets a sword. There's like so much happening, but not in a good way. And because of the editing, it's so like disconnected that it's hard to pay attention to anything. And it does this dumb like it does stupid split screens. And I swear, split screens are never good in anime. There's like maybe one time I've seen a split screen used well. They because it always takes you out of the experience, and very rarely have I seen used to convey some like more information. Like almost every time it's like a split screen and they put the other character on, but the previous character is just a still frame. So what's the point if they're not gonna like the whole point is that we're seeing two different perspectives simultaneously. So if they're both perspectives aren't changing, then why bother? So then already I'm enraged. I'm enraged. I hate everything about it. But it's amusingly terrible, right? Okay, I just want to clarify that. If you want to laugh, maybe watch one episode, but don't watch any more than that. Then, okay, they go on from there. They end up in this. They escape from this dungeon place they're in that they were teleported to. They get to the castle, and they're told that that he's the chosen one, and he has to gather together all the girls and go on this quest to defeat this evil demon guy or whatever to get home. And they're just like, okay. First off, like it just goes straight from one to the next. He doesn't question it. They just completely accept it. It's it's baffling. It's really, really, really weird. Um, and then after that, there's this scene where this girl gives like an exposition dump for like 2 straight minutes. She's just dropping tons of just straight exposition information. No, like trying to get us invested or make us care or anything like that. Just straight exposition the whole time. So the exposition is pertaining to slightly more serious matters. The whole time the camera's just focusing on like fan service shots, like the girl's butt and stuff. Already tonal disconnect. And then the music track is like this whimsical, like sort of saccharine piece. And I'm just sitting here watching like, what am I watching right now? What even is this show? Another example of like the weird direction is there's one scene where, okay, it's the main characters, and then it just suddenly cuts away. We see like 3 seconds of this girl just like come down, like look, and it's nighttime, but it was just day before. So next shot, we get 3 seconds of this girl coming down, and it's nighttime, and then then it immediately cuts back to the main characters, and it's morning of the next day, and it's like we just traverse like 8 hours in the span of 5 seconds, and cut between two different places with no context, no like transition, no nothing. It's so weird, and they didn't even need to do that because they introduce her later. And they do like a montage of all the extra girls, because the whole thing is he's joined by these 12 girls. And so they do a whole stupid montage of each girl making their entrance, like, oh, that's my favorite character, because it's a game adaptation. So, they got to show off everyone's favorite character, right? And so they do that. And then it turns out what he has to do is he has to sleep with the girls. That's how he saves the world. To birth a star child or something. Again, this show is like just it's kind of lost me at this point. I'm like, what even is happening? And that's when it struck me. Oh, it's one of those games. But the thing is, this is an anime made for TV, right? So they cut out the whole reason that you would play a game like this. And like it's just like you sort of get like a slight scene of them like lying together, and then it bleeps it out. So it's like, well, what was the point? Why did I sit through this? Lest I forget. Also, of course, it has a horribly obnoxious like animal fairy character. Of course, that oh look, we don't have to animate the mouth movements because it's a fantasy character that's like a charactered animal, cutesy animal, so we can just not animate their mouth. Nobody cares. I don't care. It's fine. Yeah, this show is extremely terrible. Wow, I'm genuinely impressed. I'm impressed. I made it through like half of the first episode of Sora to Umi no Aida, and it was really boring. The most notable thing about this is that in the first 30 seconds, they sort of just hand wave their entire premise, which is kind of weird. You would think there'd be like maybe 5-minute intro, at least, to establish its premise, because it's a weird premise. The whole thing is fish are like running low on like in the seas on Earth, and so they go to space to catch fish. Wait, since when were there fish in space? Are we gonna like clarify that? No, we're not gonna. Okay, show. Okay, and they established like you have space travel. There's space. There's like a whole squad now of space fishers, and then also now finally women are being accepted to be space fishers. All this like in literally 30 seconds. Feels like this is something you could have devoted like a good chunk of the first episode to establishing, right? But no, they just throw it right out there. They're like, okay, let's get to the chase. And I'm thinking, all right, we're gonna see some space fishing. But no, I watched the whole. I like get to 12 or 13 minutes in, and there's no space fish, so I skip until I find them, and it's not that great, and I'm like, oh, okay. Okay, characters, pretty bland, pretty boring. Nothing especially grab me about any of them. They're just kind of there. They're like cutesy, lolly type girls, but uh, it doesn't do anything that made it stand out to me. Also, it has a really annoying transition between scenes that it has no reason to be there. Uh, and the spaceship CG spaceships look like garbage. When Okay, so one of the weird things is she's like training or whatever to be a space fisher, I think, um, and she meets these girls who want to go out, and they're sort of getting harassed. The guy's like, "Oh, women will never be space fishers for 1,000 years," even though aren't they already? I don't know what he was trying to say there. And then they're like, the other dude's like, "You need a squad of was it 3 or 4? I think it's 3. Yeah, you need a squad of 3 before you can go out, and it's only 2 girls. But then the other girl comes in. She's lost. She went to the wrong place. But they're like, "Oh, you can help us out. Now we're 3." And then they go on the spaceship, and I'm like, "What?" Like the literally next shot is them like is the girl like getting on the spaceship to go space fishing, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." Cutting right to the chase. You don't need like special permits or something to do this. Like to be fully prepared. It was really weird. Um, but despite the fact that it was strange, it was also really, really boring. So yeah, I was literally dying. Like I could feel my brain melting. Cause all that like took so long, and they didn't do anything like with the characters. So yeah. All right, let's see how well I can pull this one off. I watched the first episode of Bakumatsu like a week ago. I kind of remember it. I meant to record this a lot earlier, but that clearly did not happen. So let's just go off my memory. So this is a show from Studio Dean. Very much looks like a show from Studio Dean. But what surprised me is it's not that bad. Like, I guess if I was a bit more desperate, I wouldn't mind watching more of this. It's kind of how I feel about the Dean shows. Also, Agu last season. It's like it has like the story isn't bad. Like I was I was genuinely interested to a degree in the narrative, which is like these samurai uh dudes like there's like this time travel device, and they get sent to like an alternate timeline where the bad guy went back and took control, and so then they're going, they gotta set things right. Kind of like a samurai jack type of thing, I guess. um though that's like he's in the future, so it's a bit different. This is like they're not in the future, it's just the timeline has been altered. And on that side, it actually is kind of interesting. Like I do have a degree of interest in where the story goes, um, because it's a neat angle with a more unique setting. Unfortunately, visuals are pretty bad. Like especially during just because there are action sequences, and they all look off. And the world itself is really like dry and empty. There's just no, and like this is the thing with a lot of Dean shows is they look very very flat. Everything is so flat and just lifeless, and then all the movement is equally gaudy. It doesn't really help it. And even though I was somewhat interested in the story, it's not like I was like enthralled by the narrative. I wasn't like, oh my god, I can't wait to find out what happens next. It was like, no, I'd be interested to see what happens next. And that's why it's like this is in like the 5 to 6 range as far as shows go. on my metric, which is why I was surprised that it has like a 5 on Mal, because that's more low by Mal standards. That's really low. It's like below other shows that I think are a lot worse than this is, which is just kind of like a little bit underneath passable. Um, yeah, the story, like, it's more so that the characters have they've kind of got this back and forth going. It's a little cliche, and there's a lot of stuff in here that does feel kind of by the books, even if it is moderately enjoyable slash, you know, grabs my attention. And that's ultimately why it's sort of like an amalgamation of these elements that uh, left me feeling like, yeah, I mean, I could watch another episode of this, but this is something that I'm pretty sure is not really gonna hold me. Like, I feel like I could get all the like little bits it does well, just in a better show. This isn't like, I don't have to go to this show for the things it does well. Whereas with, maybe a show that's not perfect but has a very unique appeal, then it's like you're not going to get that anywhere else. So it's worth it even if it has a lot of faults. Uh, but here, its appeal isn't especially unique. So yeah. Minutes in, I already hate it. Akanesasu Shoujo is pretty bad. Don't watch it. Okay, so in these 2 minutes, right? Set up. They do some sort of weird ritual with the radio, uh, and nothing happens. And then we get some dialogue between the characters. And what we discover is this main girl is trying to get like taken to another world with this ritual, and the friends were just going along with it to appease her. And first off, it's like, what? Like, who would agree to do this? First off, this is retarded. It's literally the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. She's like holding this radio to the god of 444. Um, it's pretty retarded. And the girls are just having playful banter. Like, it's just another thing. Um, I hate them all already. I really dislike them. The way their dynamic plays is not remotely interesting. It just feels tired. Um, and just like the same old, like, we gotta have the character who's, a little more timid, a little more understanding. And we gotta have the character who's a little more brash and confrontational. We gotta have all our boxes. Also, the visuals look really bad. Like, they don't look bad at first, but then it just all the bad stuff starts to show more and more. Like, they're walking down the steps and the walk animation just looks god awful. Like, it's often in ways that like just like straight up bad animation. I wouldn't even say like what was it, Baku or Bakumatsu, I think it was. Um, I would say that had bad animation, but like this, it's like the walk cycles are like almost, I guess because the character designs are more detailed, and just the general like look of it all is a little more professional, but then like the walk itself is so off that it creates this really really uncomfortable like dissonance and just disconnect that makes it kind of like painful to watch. I really did not like that at all. So yeah, no. So I watched the first 2 episodes of Jingai-san no Yome, and that only reason I watched the first 2 episodes is half of the first episode was the theme. Yeah, this is a short series, 3 minutes an episode. Um, the premise is that this boy gets engaged to a weird monster creature, and it's kind of stupid. So personally, I don't know what it is, but like none of these series where it's like this practically a genre unto itself in some ways, getting engaged to weird creature, or weird person or whatever. Um, I've never been a. I just generally don't like these stories. Um, I just find it like being forced into the situation kind of obnoxious, and of course, I don't know. It just bugs me when it's like they're forced into a situation they don't want to be, and then gradually over time they're whittled down to accept their situation that they were forced into, because that's usually how these series go. Not a big fan. Don't really like that on like a moral level. But in this case, it's not even like that. It's just like, what am I even watching? Um, Visually, it's about as good as you would expect from a short series. So, yeah, it's bad, but um, there's nothing really to it. The main guy, like, he likes fur. Well, they introduced that, like, he starts like swooning over this creature's fur, but then he's like, no, no, I can't let myself get like that. Um, what am I doing feeling things for this weird creature? But also, he just straight up, like, the thing that bugged me the most was, like, he gets told he's getting engaged to this creature, and it's been decided. And he's just like, what? First, he's like, what? And they're just like, it's been decided. And he's like, okay. He just accepts it. I'm here, like, really? I, I, I seriously cannot get over that. I know you have to do some stuff to get your premise down. There needs to be some suspension of disbelief, but this I can't suspend. Just give us like a 15-second explanation. It wouldn't be that hard to come up with something. But no, don't make that for extra effort. No, no thanks. Yeah, dropped. I watched the first episode of Radiant. This one was not bad. I think that's really the best way I would describe the show, is that it's not bad. It's competently produced. Like, the shot composition is generally, shows you what you need to see. The soundtrack expresses the emotions. The visuals have a generally nice color palette, and the world is moderately interesting. Everything is competent, but the issue is nothing is special. Nothing's great about it. Even in shows that I wouldn't call great, usually there's that one tidbit, that one little, gem that makes it really worth holding on to. And this show, I just don't get that from any of it. All of it feels very by the books. And if that's what you're looking for, that's perfectly fine. But especially considering I'm a little more willing to go for something by the books when it comes to like rom-com or slice of life. Stuff like that, like moe, something cute and comfy. But I've never really been a big shonen guy. So if you're going to give me a by the books shonen, I'm not gonna be a big fan. I'm already not super into shonen, but I can get into the stuff that's like really well done. But at the very least, if you're gonna tell a very straightforward like shonen story, then you're gonna need to pick up the slack somewhere else. It's gonna need to have great, fantastic presentation to really sell it. And though the visuals aren't bad, as in they're not like obviously terrible. Like, there's nothing that's like where you're like, yeah, that's just straight wrong. Like, it looks like the characters aren't on the same plane of existence, or they're walking up the stairs and the walk animation is like doesn't conform to anatomy or where the stairs are situated. Stuff like that, that's way too common. This, it's like everything is fine, but none of it has any real character. There's the biggest issue is there's like no feeling of weight to any of the movement. It definitely feels like, the way I describe it, I've used this term before, I think, is like point A to point B animation, where it's like, okay, character needs to go from point A to point B. well, you take the path of least resistance, go point A, point B, there we go. But that's not how people move. There's like, there's a dip, there's weight, the way we move, and then you can go even further beyond just how regular humans move. You can imbue personality, you bring out the eccentricities of movement, you exaggerate and heighten things. All that is what the show is missing. And as a result, it feels really just stiff. Like when he, particularly like he jumps in one scene, he like jumps onto a roof, and it's like he just stops on the roof. There's no release of the tension, which destroys the feeling of there being any sort of weight to the action. And that's really common. And that's really like my biggest issue. Is just that it needs a better visuals. And also, I find the main character's voice kind of annoying, but whatever. Yeah, dropped. 俺が好きなの Imouto. I already forgot the title. It's too long. It's too long. It's the one that has Imouto in it twice. Yeah, this is bad. Watch the first 3 minutes. Like, okay, first off, opening, it's just a bunch of girls calling him Oni-sama, Oni-chan, just various variants on Oni-chan with different, like, modifiers and stuff, which was pretty dumb and clearly established what it's going for, which is, you like incest, this is your show. Everyone else, you can peace out. But then I was watching and I was like, man, this show's also really ugly. Like, okay, first off, like, the opening is just kind of boring. They're establishing their relationship, I think, but their relationship isn't interesting or fun to watch, or it's just kind of obnoxious. She badgers him, he's absent-minded. Fascinating. But then I was just sitting there watching, I was like, I feel like their eyes are in a different place every time they cut away and cut back. Especially the main character. Like, his eyes are so far apart. He looks really stupid. And this animation looks really stupid. And I don't want to look at this for 24 minutes. And then I dropped it. So, yeah. Ken Aoki Kagayaki. This is actually not bad. So, you probably realize that I keep mentioning again and again how I look for, that one thing that I can latch on to, that I can like, that really, like, yes, I dig it. I like the thing. Yeah, so this show actually had that. Okay, I'll admit, it's not perfect. There's kind of like a lot of CG. That was one of the biggest things. Like, in the first like few minutes, there's this big shot of an army, and it's all CG, and they all use like these machine weapons that are in CG too. To be honest, the animation itself, like the movement, it's not so bad, but it just looks really out of place, which is the main issue. Because the actual like way that they're animated is, I think, pretty solid. At least so on that front. But like for a Dean show, this show has like surprisingly really good character animation. Like some of the fight scenes are just like some movement. Like it has its highs and lows, but for the most part, the animation is fairly consistent. And then every like periodically there will be a cut that you're just like, whoa, that was cool. Like that was visually really good and interesting and like had me pumped. And there's parts where it's like very, very colorful. And at times it does feel like they're going a little overboard with like the post production, like the effects and all that. But for the most part, I think it was well executed, and it gave it some nice flavor, some nice color. It presented some memorable like visual stuff. Nothing that's gonna blow your mind, but definitely I enjoyed it. And then on the front of like character, um, so the premise for this one, it's set in China, during like some feudal like warring era, and the main character, or at least it seems like it's gonna be sort of like either they're gonna come together later or whatever's happening. But right now we have two different sort of groups we're following. So this main character dude who's a slave, his family, his like village was murdered, and he was kidnapped, and is now a slave for this kingdom. And then these two girls who go from town to town peddling their like special like act, to make money and get by. Uh, and the setting is like there's sort of like this warring, like there's a nation we're in, and they're in the midst of a war, with another country, and it's pretty essential. What really got me into it was I like the character designs. I like the visual presentation for the most part. Obviously, the CG is pretty prevalent, um, but I can get over that. Um, Soundtrack is a bit of both. It has its good moments, but there's also times where I think it goes a little overboard. But then they introduce this one little girl character who's like she's like a little girl with red eyes. I First off, I love her character design, so I was already like sold. And then she's just really cute, like between the voice acting and her character design, and just like the things she says, the way she talks, this very sort of like reserved but like confident, expressions got me into it. I was like, I like this character. I want to see more of her specifically. And that's what I mean when I look for that one thing that grabs me. She was that one thing. And then all these other good things, stacked onto that, but also made it that, the less good elements I was able to overlook. So I might not finish this one, but if it holds on to, like, maintains the things I like, I could definitely see completing this show. Alright, Beelzebub-jou ni Okini. I already forgot what the title is. Something Mama. Yeah, this show's interesting. Uh, on the first front, it's actually pretty pretty good visually. Like, it's very consistent. Color palette might be a little bright for my eyes, my personal tastes. Um, I would like some darker tones, but that's more of like a personal thing. It does feel a little too one note, and I'll get to that later. But essentially, the premise is like it's hell, but like cute. Like all the demons and stuff like serve their role, and it's peaceful and it's beautiful and everything's cute and delightful. And Beelzebub, this girl, is like the main character is this her new assistant who looked up to her, and he finds out she's a bit of like, a bit more nuanced than he was expecting, and that she can be very ditzy and doesn't like to work, but then also she has sides to her where she's more serious or able to or she is very experienced in combat and all that. Like, she knows her way around doing stuff, even though you might not think it based on her like expressions and initial impressions. Show's very much going for we're gonna make you throw up from how cute this is. Like the opening, she's like dreaming of running through fields of cotton candy while she comes across a candy house. Um, that scene, I almost dropped it because it was literally too much. I felt like I needed to hurl. It was too much. After that, toned it down just a notch. And I think I do like it's just like the general humor and atmosphere is very going for that comfiness. And though I guess my biggest issue would be it does sometimes feel like it's trying too hard. I hate that term, but To put it simply, it's like there's a cute when it just is cute, and then there's cute when it's like, look at me, I'm so cute. This was my problem with Comic Girls, right? I felt like it did that nonstop, and I find it just kind of annoying. While Beelzebub isn't quite so vocal about it, quite so in your face about it, it still does very much push the line little bit for me, where it feels like they're doing things only because they're like, well, people think this is cute, so let's like push it up to 11. And at a certain point, it becomes a little too much. It's why I don't like certain like types of shows when they're too obsessed with one single emotional state, because it just is kind of tiring and exhausting to be in this one emotion for so long with so little variety. Uh, so I could see myself swinging either way on this, because I do like their relationship. I like the humor. It's very, lighthearted. It's not trying to pull anything too big, and it's very much got this like, sort of cheesy shoujo ness to it that I like. I like that type of stuff where he's like, the dude does something, sort of like that like makes her, she's like, oh no, like I'm embarrassed, to herself, and it's very, a little over the top, but I kind of enjoy that type of stuff. I'm a fan. So yeah, I think overall the best thing about this is that it's just really well put together presentation wise. Like, it has a very, even if it's not quite my taste, it does have a very well meshed, unified aesthetic to it. It's nothing feels like it doesn't gel, which I think is pretty commendable. So yeah.